All right. So when we're talking about covering elections, we know a huge part of it is actually about data, because you have the candidates, you have, of course, we know the votes, and also we know that, who voted for which candidates, and all those information can be converted into data, quantitative information. And using those data and quantitative information, we're able to better inform our readers about the elections, and of course, and also after the elections. So today we are going to look at data stories that you can do before the election, on the election day, as well as post-election. The purpose here is to give you some ideas, about some data stories that you are able to pursue when an election is happening. And we'll spend the second half of our session today on some practical practical session on using the Google Sheets to do simple data analysis and a little bit of data cleaning. All right. So probably one of the most important thing before an election, right, for journalists is how can we help our voters to make an informed decision during an election. And that involves, of course, telling them who are the candidates, what do they, which party do they represent, what kind of policies are they going to bring, what kind of changes are they going to bring to the country if they are elected into the office, right? And we know this is not something, very simple, because one, there's a huge amount of candidates, especially, when you have a vibrant democracy, everyone can participate in an election. And in that case, you would have, multiple, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of candidates. So how do you help the voters to make sense of, who are these people? What do they represent? How should I make my decision? This is where data might be helpful to help you give a better picture to the voters. So the basic information that we should inform our voters, of course, includes, the age, the gender, the professional background, education, qualification of our candidates, right? And media has been doing that. However, in the past several years, because of the rise of data journalism, we see more and more interesting and engaging projects in terms of introducing the candidates. So one project that I always like to point to from our region is this project by the Straits Times for their 2020 general election. And as we know, that Singapore is not a huge country with many candidates. However, in last general election, there were at least 4 political parties contesting, right? And this is some interactive that they have designed, right, to show, to make it more interesting when it comes to like who are the candidates. So for the first one, you just need to like drag your mouse to guess how many candidates have a background in law. Once you have done that, then it will tell you that whether you are right or wrong, and it would then tell you that the background of the candidates and which party they are from. The People's Action Party is the ruling party. And more on their background. Okay, so I can keep scrolling, and then it will tell you the opposition party. Then the second question is, right, how many candidates are newcomers, right? They are first time contesting. Again, I can make a guess, 77. Okay, I actually got the exact answer, 77. There are 77 candidates, new candidates. So you see that they compare in different elections, how many new candidates. Which party are they from? there are like more than three parties contesting. How many candidates are under 40 years old? Okay. And they'll show you the distribution of the age. Most importantly, they'll tell you the age distribution in different party. Here, they'll tell you like different parties. So you can see that for PAP, right, the ruling party, you can see that most of the candidates are above 40, right? And you can see for Workers' Party, WP, most of the candidates are below 40, right? So this is a very good chart for you to make the comparison. Right, and that's it, right? Usually when we do a data journalism story, if it's most of it is about data, don't try to make it too long because people tend to get tired about data and information, okay? Even if you have like very good charts like this, right? So keep it short. And if you have like good human stories, videos and pictures, right? And then, with some data, then it is fine to like make it longer. Okay, the second, of course, you can do one more step further after covering, the basic information about candidates, is to look at political and economic background. Economic interests, for example, if the candidates have been receiving projects from the government. So some of the, I don't have an example here, but I know there are projects that, look at all the government procurements, government projects, contracts, and to check, who are the directors and shareholders, of the companies that receive such projects, and to see if those directors or shareholders or their ultimate, business beneficial, whether they are any candidates, because there will be a conflict of interest. It's just like when President Trump in the U.S., when he was contesting, a huge debate about his candidacy is actually, that his business empire is also involved in government contracts. So that's one thing that we can look at. The other thing I think is very relevant to the Philippines is the political dynasties, right? We know that political dynasties play a big role in the Philippines politics. And in this case, there are actually more than one news organization that have done this kind of analysis. So let's look at some. This is done by the BBC News in Indonesia. This is in Bahasa Indonesia, so let me translate to English. So who are the candidates for the political analysis in your area? The translation, of course, is not very accurate, but I just want to show you that they have built a database here, and you're able to check, for example, based on where you are voting, which provinces. So I'll go to Kalimantan Tengah. And they'll tell you that in Kalimantan Tengah, there are 41 pairs of candidates, and 5 of them are part of political dynasty, or they were involved in corruption cases. Right, so they will tell you that, okay, this is the candidates, and this is candidate Ronnie Carlos. And his in-law, I'm not sure here whether it's father-in-law or mother-in-law, right, is also a politician. Is also someone in the office. And the other one is this another politician. This is his brother. Is a governor of Kalimantan Tengah. Okay. And the third one, another candidate, and his husband as well as father, both of them are holding office in politics. And there are other candidates as well. So they will show you their relationship of their family members who are in politics or who are in office, to show you the political dynasties, right? And of course, this kind of data, right, is not available it's not collected by the authorities. When you want to, when you want to nominate yourself as a candidate, usually in the nomination form, you don't have to declare like, or whether you have any families members who are in politics or who are in public office, right? So this kind of information is usually collected by the journalists. And when it comes to collecting data that is not collected by the authorities, okay, it usually has very high value because nobody else has the data, only you have the data. So all the stories that you have produced using this data would be like exclusive stories, right? So there's a lot of value in collecting your own data. But again, collecting data, it depends on which kind of data are you collecting. Sometimes could be very, very tough, very, very complicated. Another story was done by the reader in Taiwan, right? Okay, this was during the 2018 presidential election. They have collected the data of more than 9,000 candidates, and to look at their family relationship. So again, they built a database. You're able to search for different areas in Taiwan, or you can just look at the results. They have found that these candidates, this is the name of the candidates, each circle shows the number of terms, how many terms his family members in the office. So the first one, the blue color, is that his own position. He was elected in the office for 4 times, this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. And the orange color means that they're direct family members. So this one shows his father, who was a councillor for 2 terms, and then his brother, councillor as well, 2 terms, and his in-law, councillor for 6 terms. Okay, and another one is the again in-law, another 2 terms. Then his niece or nephew, 8 terms. Right. So altogether, this family have been elected 24 terms in the office in total. So this is the ranking of all the different political dynasties in Taiwan. Okay. Of course, if you want to look at your own voting area, you're able to select, and they will tell you who are the political dynasties, in your area. Okay. Right, so these are some interesting. Why is it important for the candidates, right? Because for the voters, because of course the voters want to know whether certain candidates, right, they were elected or they were now nominated not because of their own capacity, because of the family's influence. And of course, we know that when families, if you are a political dynasty, right, you will always try to maintain your dominance in politics, and because of that, you will have to make sure someone from your families, are elected as public office. So it also has this element of corruption inside as well, corruptions, cronyism, things like that. So it is actually good to make it more transparent, so the voters can consider this factor when voting. However, unfortunately, right, this kind of data is usually not captured by the authorities, the election commissions. But still, it is very important, especially for countries like the Philippines. Besides from that, right, we should also look at some of the more sensitive information of the candidates. For example, the criminal records, court cases, whether they have been sued or not, their assets, and political donations. Right, these are some of the usual things that journalists should try to investigate and should try to make it public. So if you're covering a small area, for example, a district or a province, right? If the number of candidates are, probably 10 or 20, right, or less than 50, right, it is possible, right, to collect the information by yourself and to make them public. This story was done by Reuters. Okay. This story is not just about candidates, but the way the candidates are presented is also very interesting. Instead of telling you how many candidates in India, this was during the 2019 general election. Instead of just giving you numbers, they decided to show you every photo of the candidates. Of course, these photos are available from the Election Commission. So all the candidates, they have to submit their own photo when they want to be nominated as candidate. So you are scrolling a wall of photos of the politicians, candidates. You keep scrolling. Now you have scrolled through 2,000, and you will notice that all of them are men. And there was one constituency which has 185 candidates. Imagine how long the ballots can be. Keep scrolling. Now you have scrolled through 5,000 candidates. Okay, and keep scrolling. Now, after 7,000 candidates, you finally get to see female candidates. And there are only 700 female candidates, which is about 9% of the total candidates. 6 of the candidates are third gender. So in total, there are 8,000 candidates. And not just how many candidates, their gender distribution, you'll be able to look at the criminal charges. Again, this information is also from the Election Commission. So you'll see that there are candidates who are having like 240 cases. And these are all criminal charges against this individual. And yet, they still get to stand in the election. You know, there are others that have 200 cases, which is a bit crazy. And they also have the assets, how much assets, how much properties they own for each candidate. And you see that the richest candidate, you know, he own personal asset is more than 120 million. And the age distribution, this is quite typical, right? So again, they don't give you very detailed because, you know, this is Reuters and they are writing this story for general, their audience outside of India. I think it's their international audience. So they want to give you an overview of the candidate's profile. But, you know, if we want to go deeper, these are some of the information, you know, that we can try to find out and try to show to our readers. So if you have like access to court cases, you know, court documents, from there you might be able to cross-check, you know, names that have been involved in criminal cases, involved in any civil suits. You might be able to cross-check those names with the names within amount of candidates to see which candidates, you know, are, you know, having this high numbers of court cases or, you know, have been involved in criminal charges like, you know, probably sexual harassment, corruption, and things like that, right? Those are very, very important information, I think, for the voters to make an informed decision. The other thing about information about candidates is if they are incumbent, right? If they were in office and they are now trying to continue their office, right? So we are able to look at their performance when they were lawmakers or when they were councillors, and to see whether they are effective or not in delivering their responsibility. So one project that was done by a group of Malaysian journalists plus volunteers, right, is that they actually made an online database to show the member of parliaments in Malaysia and how they perform in the Dewan Rakyat. Dewan Rakyat is the legislative hall. Okay. So here you just have to put the name of the candidates or put the name of the constituency. So for example, I'm going to put my own constituency. This is my member of parliament. And you'll see that, like, you know, different indicators of his performance. Availability 9 out of 10. Availability means that whether he is, you know, easy to be reached. Okay, it has Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. He has a phone number, he has an email. Loyalty means whether he remains with the same party or he like to, you know, jump from party to to another party. Work ethic is attendance in parliament. How many questions he has raised in the parliament, how many bills, how many motions, and things like that. But a lot of that is not available because they are still collecting information for this database. Transparency, 0. Win rate, right? Okay. So let me try another one, one that is more popular. Okay, so you can see that the work ethics, this one, she has already asked 12 questions in the parliament. If you click on that, you'll be able to see what kind of questions that she has asked in the parliament. This reflects like her priorities, as well as whether she's able to bring some of the problems faced by the voters in her constituency into the parliament. Okay, so this kind of database is actually very good for the voters to make decision when it comes to election. Right, another one that is also helpful, another types of data stories, is to look at what are the possible outcomes in an election, and what does that matter, right? So this kind of predictions or analysis before election is very, very common, right? But this is, something is common doesn't mean that, it doesn't have the value. I think it is still very important to have this kind of analysis. For example, this one, it was done by the New York Times during the US presidential election. You're able to like put different states in, the candidates. If Trump win the state and another Texas, and then, oops, not won yet. Oh, he has to win quite a number of, then he wants, right? So this will help you to understand like why your vote is important, right? So you can choose different potential outcome. You can reset it and you can make your own prediction. This is important because it tells you that how much your vote really matters. If you are voting in one of these they call it swing states, right? States that can swing to either of the candidates, right? Then your vote become very, very important, and that is why you should vote in this election. But if you are from like those kind of like deep blue state in the US, like California, right? Your vote actually doesn't really matter because the candidate is going to win your state by a large majority anyway. Okay, so this is good for voters to make a decision about whether they should vote and whether they want to vote, and this will give them like to tell them that what their votes, how their votes can change the final outcomes. All right. This has been done like many times by many media organizations, but the way to do that, has become more and more complicated and sophisticated, right? As just now I showed you the New York Times story. There are more and more different types of visualizations that you can do, right? We'll talk more about visualizations later in our second sessions. Right now, the first one is more on the story ideas as well as some data analysis. Would like to get a feel of, how do you follow the workshop so far, the session so far? I have a question for you, right? Any one of you are making are doing any data-driven stories? And what kind of stories do you hope to produce, right? Is it about the candidates? Is it about the election results? Is it about the election analysis before the voting day? Probably you can share with me in the chat box. Like what kind of data stories are you pursuing right now, or you plan to do? You still have about 2 months away from your polling day, right? Yeah, probably you can like tell me a little bit more about what's your plan in the chat box, and then probably I can show you some examples. Okay, good. We have some response. Election results. Yes, so Dawn is going to make some data-driven stories on the election results. Yeah, that is usually the very typical thing to do for any media organization, right? To look at election results. But personally, I actually think that reporting before the election is actually more important. because once the election is over, right, things have been decided. You can only look at okay, what had happened, right? But there's nothing much that you can do to change to have a bigger impact. So if you want to have bigger impact, it is usually before the election happens. Okay, from Dan Gonzaga, simplifying the court cases involving some of our national officers to make it more digestible to our electorate. That's actually very good data-driven reporting. Look at the court cases, yeah, and to probably look at what kind of cases are those. You can do a ranking of how many cases involved for each candidate, how serious it is, right? Depends. You can measure the seriousness of the cases by looking at what are the maximum penalty or maximum fine for each case if they are found guilty. Anyone else? Any data stories or something you're looking for when you join this workshop? Are you looking for like specific ideas or specific? Okay, Julie, I have been on and off. Okay. No problem, Julie. The whole session is being recorded, so you're able to watch back. You can watch the playback after the session. Okay. Data here means that researchers that have track or trace back the political dynasties and in probably some provinces, some areas, right? Okay, Lita said that none so far. Okay. Any other regions that that probably someone is doing that? Caroline said they are for Mindanao dynasties. Cherry said there's a study. Okay, cool. There are studies, right? Celine also said that. Between political dynasties and poverty. Interesting. Yep. So if that is the case, right, if you have like academic study, then it is a good idea to actually work with the academics who study these political dynasties, right? This is how you're able to find some useful information from them. Probably they have mapped out, if they want to quantify or measure the relationship, they would have to map out the people, right? And which means they have the information. So what you need to do is actually get the information, and probably you want to update it for the coming elections, or you want to look at some of the candidates. You want to do some analysis about how long this province or this area has been dominated by this certain family, and what is their performance, right? If you look at political dynasties and look at poverty, for example, poverty eradication, how much have they done? How effective, have they done to eliminate poverty in that area, for example? So don't always think about like election data is about candidates. It's about the official data from the Election Commission. A lot of things that are not in the official records, you need to find other data sources, right? So probably in this case you should talk to researchers if for those information. Okay, Robert, your team is preparing a story about established and emerging dynasties across the Philippines. Buma said, is it possible to use data to see if survey results are correct? For survey results, right, guys, there are scientific ways for you to look at whether the survey, we don't know whether the survey result is accurate or not, but we are able to question the methodology behind the survey. So if you look at, just go and Google, how do you evaluate a public survey? They will tell you like, how many samples do you need, right? How many samples do you need? What is your margin of error? Did you do random sampling? Those kind of things. So when you are measuring the quality of a survey or a public polling, right? You should look at those indicators. What is the margin of error? What is the sampling method? how big is the sampling size. It doesn't mean you need to have like huge sampling size. Yeah, it really depends on how how big the population that you're trying to survey. So just Google it. There are many articles out there discussing what is a good public survey. All right, we have a look at the age of candidates, youngest to oldest, yes, gender, yes. Release the profiles of party list candidates, yeah. Okay, cool. Guys, those are very good ideas. So I hope the next part of it should give you better ideas. One thing that I would like to emphasize is actually that I know that personalities is a huge thing in the Philippines election. Okay, it's not just in Philippines, right? In many countries, they are people tend to focus more on personalities. People tend to focus more on the kind of personal competition between candidates, right? But really what really impact the people, right, is actually the policies, right? We know that. So if we are able to transfer some of those attention from personalities to policies, right, it is always a good thing. However, it is not easy, to ask people to look at policies, because policies tend to be dry, boring, less interesting, right? Okay, compared to the candidates themselves. So here are some of the stories that we can look at. This is Reuters report on Modi's, so it's called Modi's report card. It is pretty straightforward, and this is also very straightforward and easy to implement. Is to look at the election promises that have been made by the candidates in the previous election, and how much of them have been fulfilled, right? So you can look at different sections, how many promises have been fulfilled, partially fulfilled, or not fulfilled at all. Okay. Of course, there are. If you just go and search for other media organizations, they have better ways of presenting this kind of report cards or policies, right? The other way to do that is doing a quiz, right? This is done by the Initium Lab in Taiwan during their presidential election, 2016. Okay, quite some time ago. So what happened is that they asked, they will ask the readers to pick what are the issues that they are concerned about, right? For example, I'm going to pick this is housing, healthcare, education, diplomacy. All right, diplomacy between Taiwan and China. Then after I've done that, then they will ask me some questions on housing policy. What is my preference? On healthcare, diplomacy, there are several others, right? So I can also like skip if I don't want to tell. This is asking for my personal information. I can also skip. Then based on my preference on each of those questions, right? They will tell me that actually I am more aligned with this candidate, because this candidate is championing those policies that align with my preference. So if I am to vote according to policies, then this is the candidate that I should be voting for, right? So instead of looking at who I like, right, this is looking at whose policies actually align more with your views. Okay, then they will tell you that the three different candidates, their stance on different policies, different issues. Right, I think this is a good way to try to divert those attentions from personalities to policies. A lot of time, we don't want people to vote just because the voters like this candidate because he's more charismatic, he is younger or things like that, right? We also want voters to be able to compare the different policies, right, to encourage more healthy competition of policies. Manifesto. Then the other thing that we should do, besides from helping the voters to understand the candidates, to understand their manifesto, The other thing is that how much money they have spent and what kind of strategies they have used to help them garner the votes, right, is also very important, because that usually involves, you'll see that candidates with a lot of money, they tend to be, more sophisticated in their campaigns. And the more money they spend in a campaign, we know that, after they are elected into the office, most of them are trying to recover those expenses, right? So how much you spend in the election is usually very closely tied to potential corruption, right? So in this case, we know that social media manipulation, how they use social media ads to target their audience. I think tomorrow, Craig Silverman, our trainer from the US, he will be talking more about investigating social media ads. Here, what if something, the ads are not on social media and you are not able to like track them on social media? For example, billboards, right, that candidates have put up on the streets, right? How do you track them? So this is one project done by, I'll just go to that project, done by the Reader, again in Taiwan, is that they try to outsource all the billboards put up by candidates by asking their readers to take a picture of the billboard and send to us and tell us, the locations of the billboard. So I'll just show you. They have like 2018 elections data and also 2020 election data. So it's a crowdsourced database submitted by their readers. So their readers have to send them a picture of the billboard, the name of the candidates, and also the location. So these are all the billboards by this candidate. She is the current Taiwan president. Okay, so the purpose of this project is to calculate or estimate, how much candidates have spent to put up billboards, because billboards is one of the most expensive political advertisement in Taiwan. They spend more on billboards than social media. Okay. Now, I have shown you, more than 10 examples of data stories that you can do pre-election. So on polling day, election day, usually people just care about one thing, the results. Who win, who lose. So there's nothing much, you can do on election day, right? People just want to know the latest results. So most media organizations would prepare a dashboard, something like this, right? To look at, to show the latest results. And I don't plan to spend a lot of time on this. You just have to go to look at some of the top media organizations in the US or in the West to look at, what are the best way to present election results. Okay. Most of them are quite straightforward, right? And most of it is not about the visualization. Most of it is about how fast you can update the results. Okay, after election, there are also data-driven stories that you can do. One is to look at the results analysis, right? The swing between parties. For example, this is the swing between Republican and Democrats in the US. I know, in fact, in the Philippines that political parties is not that important comparing to candidates. So probably you can't do this kind of historical comparison. But another type that you can do is actually to look at the voters' behavior with other indicators or other variables, right? For example, this story. This story is looking at the presidential election in France in 2017, where the Macron, who is the current president, beat Le Pen. Le Pen, she's the far right party, the candidates from the far right party. So this is usually what we see, a choropleth map showing the supports or the voting percentage for each candidate in the country. But when you compare that with other indicators, social economic indicators, for example, unemployment. So looking at these two maps, right, the left one shows the support of Le Pen, okay, the candidates from the far right party. And this one shows you the unemployment rate in different areas in the country. You'll be able to see very clearly that areas that has a higher unemployment rate tend to vote Le Pen, okay? Because their economy is bad in these areas, and Le Pen is trying to, use those issues to campaign for herself. So you can see that actually works very well, right? For Macron, you can see that here, the areas that he enjoy higher support are areas that have more voters with higher education degree, right? The more educated, the higher education qualification the voters have, the more they tend to vote for Macron, right? So you can do the same analysis for your country to look at, how voting behavior correlates with the other indicators of the society. One more thing is, another story is this one. Let me show you the New York Times story. This is a very interesting story because they found that in the presidential election between Biden and Trump, they found that communities with higher percentage of immigrant, okay, which means people who were not born in the United States, which means that they, if the constituency has a higher number of immigrants, they shift towards Trump, not Joe Biden. Okay, you might think that because Trump is anti-immigration, so the immigrant communities might be against him, but results shows that no, it's the opposite way, right? As of why this happened, of course you need to do more analysis, but they use the voting results to show you that areas with high percentage of immigrants, they tend to vote for Trump more than Biden, right? This is a very interesting finding, I think. This is like against popular perceptions, right? So you are able to do these kind of things. You are able to provide people with better understanding of the society. Okay, like why our people think like that. Okay, and again, the other thing is that once the election is finished and once the results are out, of course, you want to help voters to know their new representative, right? Who are the winners? And this is a good project that you can refer to, is by Call Matters. Call Matters is actually a local media organization in California, US. And every election, they would done something like this, is to use the demographics of the legislators or of the lawmakers. And then you will be able to pick, let's say that I identify as Democrats, I am white, and I am straight or LGBT, right? And then you can then pick your own identity. You're in your 40s, okay? You make less than 100,000, and to see which lawmakers, which legislators share the same demographic as you. Okay, so you can see that if I pick something like Republican and Latino and LGBTQ, there's none. Okay, so most of them, of course, we know that most are Democrats. This is in California. Democrats, white, straight. What else? 60s. Okay, earn more than 100,000 a year. You'll see a lot of same people like you. Okay, I think this is good to because voters, of course, they like to know that who are similar to me, so they can better understand I understand my situation and better champion my interests, right? And this will also help the voters to know better about their legislators. Okay. All right. We'll spend the rest of the time to do some practical exercise. Okay. So when talking about data stories, the first thing is, of course, to find the data, right? And that's usually the toughest stage in doing data-driven story, is to find the data and to do data analysis. One important source of data, of course, is the election commissions. So I've spent some time on the Philippines Election Commission's website, COMELEC. And what I found is that they provide the candidates list in PDF format. Okay, I'm going to share with you one folder, which I have put in the PDF file that I got from the Election Commission. So please open this folder in your laptop and look at this file. This is called manila.pdf. It's a PDF file. This is the document that I downloaded from the collate website. And it is the list of candidates from the region of Manila for different positions, right? Mayor, vice mayor, councillor, and things like that. So the problem is that if I want to do an analysis, for example, I want to know the gender balance between among the candidates, right? How many male, how many females, right? I will first need to get this information into a spreadsheet, right? A spreadsheet can be Google Sheets, can be Excel, okay? But if I want to do that, I can't just do copy and paste, okay? If I copy the data, of course, I cannot open PDF using Excel, right? It doesn't work. So if I copy the data and I want to convert it into a spreadsheet, if I just copy and paste, this is what I would get, okay? Everything in one single column. There's no multiple column. So I can't really do any analysis, right? I have to manually put them into the right cells for me to do analysis, right? So in that case, when we are dealing with PDF file like this, we'll need some tools to help us to convert the table into a spreadsheet, okay? Again, when I say spreadsheet, it could be Google Sheets, it could be Excel, right? I use Google Sheets here because that it is available for everyone to use, okay? It works very similar in Google Sheets and Excel. So in that case, where we will need to convert data like this into spreadsheets, right? There are two tools that I recommend. One is called Tabular, okay? Another one is called Comet Docs, okay? After we convert the data into table, we can then use Google Sheets to do our analysis. So we're going to do a very quick exercise today to do this, all right? So first thing, guys, right-click, download the PDF onto your computer. After that, I hope you have installed Tabular on your laptop. If you have not, you can try to do it now. Tabular.technology. I think it has been sent email to you before that you should download this and install it before this session. Okay, it is available for Windows, Mac. Once you have downloaded Tabular, launch it. Launch Tabular. I'm going to open my Tabular. Tabular will open a new tab on your browser. So Tabular will open a new tab on your browser, on your default browser, whether you're using a Chrome or Firefox, right? You will get this. And this is where you will have to import your PDF to Tabular. Okay, so I'm going to click Browse, find the files, manila.pdf, okay, click Open. I will import the PDF file into Tabular. For those who can't install Tabular for whatever reason, okay, don't worry. Later I'll show you Comet Docs. Right, so they are the second tool. Comet Docs doesn't require any installation. Okay, so once the document has been uploaded on Tabular, here is where you're able to convert the table in PDF into spreadsheet. So how do you do that? It's very easy, guys. So you just have to select the table that you want to convert the information that you need. There's some tips here, okay? The tips is that, don't select things outside of the table like this. Don't do this because the NCR Manila is outside of the table, all right? The second thing is that don't include merge cell. For example, this table should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, right? But the first one, the title Mayor only has one column because it merged all the 5 columns into one. In this case, try to limit your table to the 5 columns. Don't include any merged cells, right? Because Tabula would be confused, like, okay, this is Mayor, but this doesn't look like it belongs to any of the columns. So where should I put Mayor, right? So you get confused, right? It's not very clever, okay? So in that case, you have to limit your cell to the table, okay? I would usually try to keep it inside of the border, right? So that Tabula knows better, like, okay, this is what you want. Because if you put it outside of the border, again, you might confuse Tabula, like, okay, what does it mean here? The space here, is it a new role or is it something there? Okay, so I try to limit my area inside the table and just include the data that I want. After that, you can then click preview and export. And now you have the data in a table, okay? If this doesn't work, right, guys, you can also try different extraction methods here. So by default, it is using stream, okay? But sometimes when it doesn't work, you can try and use lattice. Right, so here, if I use lattice, I get no data. I don't get any data. So in this case, I should stick with stream. Okay, so once you see that your data is in this format, right, there are several ways you can get the data out. One is to export it as a CSV. The CSV can be opened with any spreadsheet program, including Excel. Another easier way is just to copy. Use Control-C, the keyboard shortcut, to copy, and go to a spreadsheets and just paste the data. Okay, as simple as that. Go here, copy, and then paste the data. Right? Are you able to do that? So you might ask me, like, okay, but there are many tables that I want from the same PDF file. So what should I do? You can go back to revise selection, which means go back to this interface. Here you are able to select multiple tables. You can click repeat this selection to all pages, to next page or all pages. But the problem is that if you have the same table at the same location on each page, then you can do repeat selection. But in our case, it doesn't work like that, right? Because this one has 1, 2, 3 tables on first page. On second page, it only has 2 tables, and the location of the tables is different. So we can't actually do repeat. Okay. So here we need to manually select each table that we want to extract. I know that is a lot of work to do, but folks, come on, it's still better than finding someone to manually key in the data for you, right? Usually, we ask our interns to do that, but I don't agree at all. That is not a good way to use your intern, right? And get them some more meaningful assignments, please. Okay, don't ask them to be your data, to do all your data keying, right? So if you have these tools, then you can select the tables, different tables. Then you click preview and export. Here you're able to get different tables. The first one, the second table, the third table, you see all the tables are here. So what I need to do is I can just copy all the tables and put into my spreadsheets, copy paste. And now I have all the data here. Okay. There is still one problem, right? Is that, let me just show you. If you can click here to clear all selections. And you can also use this option, auto detect tables. This is kind of smart, but sometimes it doesn't give you the result that you want, but we can try this. Okay, if I auto select tables, detect tables, then we export. You see what kind of tables you get. Okay, not bad. There's a title here, mayor, you need to remove it. Vice mayor, I'm not sure why it appears like this. Okay, so you still can use this data, but the problem here is that whether you are using the auto detect tables function or you manually select the table, you will still have to do some cleaning, in this stage, right? Why? Because you can see that political party, right? Under political party, right? This is supposed to be the name of one single party, right? But it has been split into 2 cells. Okay, so if we look back at our PDF, this is the name of the party, right? This should be in 1 cell, but because they are in 2 lines, right? So Tabula split it into 2 cells. So we still have to do things like, manually clean the data. Okay, for this as well. This is actually 1 candidate. The name has been split into 2 cells. So I have to do this. Of course, there are ways to help you speed it up if you know how to use some formula, some spreadsheet formula to clean this up. But anyway, if you don't know all the formulas, right, you still can spend some time just manually clean them up. Doing data storage is like this, guys. There's no other choice but to spend some time getting the data, preparing your data, right? So now the data is clean. Okay, each candidate takes up 1 row, right? We don't want candidates to have 2 rows. Okay, so the name, the political party. Okay, so this is our data, right? So you have to do it for all the different candidates. So if you know some formula that tells you like, okay, if this has no data, then join this with this. There are formulas that help you can do that, right? Is to check each row. If this cell, you're using a formula saying that if this cell is blank, then please join this cell with this cell into 1. There are formulas like that. I'm not going to go into that. It's too complicated. But there are ways to do that. Just want to let you know that. But worst come to worst, if you don't know how to do that, you just do it manually, right? I did all this cleaning, and eventually I was able to get this. Okay, this is all the candidates from the PDF for all different positions. I added 1 more new column to tell me which position are they contesting, because we know that the first table, this is the first table. The first table is for mayor. Second table is for vice mayor, and the 1 is for the first district councillor for first district, and then second district, right? So I put this data into a new column here. So now I have each row representing 1 candidate, and also telling me which position are they contesting for. All right. So now you will get this format. Okay, we'll use this format later. This is under the file Tabula Manila. So you please make a copy of this file by clicking right click, make a copy. Okay. So if I make a copy, and remember, once you have the copy, under your name, the owner is you, then right click and move to your own Google Drive. Okay, move to your own Google Drive. Make a copy in this folder, and later, like Franco, you can right click and move to your own Google Drive, right? After today, I'm going to delete all the copies in my folder here. Okay, so if you want a copy of that, remember, after you make a copy, you have to move to your own Google Drive, else I just remove it. Okay. Right, move this tabula manila. Don't move my, somebody move my, okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for returning back my spreadsheets. Guys, don't remove my spreadsheets, please. Don't move my spreadsheet to your Google Drive, okay? But since I'm the owner, I always have ways to like get it back. Okay, no worries. All right. So while you are doing that, I'm going to show you an alternative. If Tabula doesn't work for you, or the result that you get from Tabula is not satisfying, right? Sometimes Tabula perform really bad. You can't get the data from Tabula, right? The alignment is wrong, the format is wrong for whatever reason. There is an alternative called comments.com. I'm going to put the link in the chat box, comment docs. You can create a free account. A free account allows you to upload, I think, 50 megabytes or 10 megabytes, something like that, right? But if you go for a paid account, I actually have a paid account. They are quite generous with the paid account. They gave me, I'm not sure the price now, because I got this paid account many years ago. Okay, so let me log into my paid account. I'm not sure about the price now, but the paid account that I subscribed to many years ago, it gives me 10 gigabytes, and that's a lot. I cannot finish it. So comment docs, right, is everything's online. The difference between comment docs and Tabula, the biggest difference is that everything is online. You don't have to install it, okay? So here, you just have to upload the Manila PDF. Okay, and the file will appear here. Then you click convert Manila. Right, first you upload, then you click convert. You drag this file into here, convert to Excel. Remember, always pick Excel, and you click convert. And it is now converting. You can see there's a little small bar moving here. Once it stops moving, which means it is completed. Okay, you click on this and download. Yes, click OK. Click here to download your file, and now you will get your file in Excel. Okay, I'm going to show you how the file looks like on Excel. Okay, this is the file, how it looks like on Excel. Let me make it bigger. Okay, so you notice that for comment docs, right, I was not able to pick which table I want from the file. Okay, so because of that, it converts everything on the PDF. You see, these are the titles of first page here. This part, Republic of the Philippines, Commission on Elections, blah, 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 right? Comment docs would convert everything into spreadsheet. Okay, but it has the same problem as Tabula. You see that? This one, this belongs to this is the name of the one of the party, right? And this supposed to belongs in the same cell as this, right? So this one should be here like this. Okay, this one should be blank. But even comment doc doesn't have the capacity to like put all this inside one cell. So you still have to do the manual cleaning, you know, by moving this into here and then this into here, right? So that you have the full name of the party in one cell, right? The same for this one. This is supposed to be the name of the candidates, should be here, I think, something like that. Okay, so this is how you will get this is how comment docs would convert. Okay, for the vice mayor, your data is here, so you have to manually delete all those the footer, for example, here, this one, they also convert everything here into spreadsheet as well, into Excel. So you need to manually remove them just to get the data here, right? So again, you can see that there are pros and cons for both tools, right? One is online, one requires installation, one allows you to select the table, one converts everything on the page, right? So if you have a PDF file that is, say, 500 pages, but you just want one table out of the 500 pages, don't upload the whole file 500 pages to Command Docs. You would use up your free account, the limit, very, very quickly, right? So you need to split the PDF. You need to take out the page that has the table that you want, split it out as a separate PDF file, and then upload that PDF file to Command Docs to save some space. And also the conversion time will be much lower. If you just put 500 pages to Command Docs, it will convert everything on that 500 pages, and it will give you a very huge Excel file. You open up that file and you just actually need one table from the Excel, right? So you should split the PDF. So for example, if I just want the first table here, then I should split this PDF to give me only the first page, right, as a separate PDF. And then I upload that file to Command Docs to be converted. Okay, before we move into spreadsheets, any questions so far? Anyone has any problems during doing the conversion? If no questions, or you're still typing? No? Okay, good. Let's move on to the next stage, right, using spreadsheets. I hope you have made the copy. Yeah, so guys, if your files are still here, do you want to move the files to your folder so that it doesn't stay in my folder? I'm going to remove them after this session. Okay. So Lauren, Angelica, Cherry, just move them to your own folder. Okay. So I'm going to show you, once you have done cleaning the data, I'm going to show you one very important function, very useful function in spreadsheets. It is also available on Excel, right? It is called pivot table. Pivot table will help us to summarize our data, analyze our data in a very efficient manner. Okay. But first, right, you need to structure your data. So for example, if you want to do an analysis of the candidates, you want to know how many of them are male, female, which party they're from, which position they are contesting. You want to do an analysis, right? You need to make sure that each role here showing only one candidate. Okay, you can't have several candidates. You can't have like, this is the first candidate, this is the second, this is the third candidates on the same row. No, you need to split them out. Okay, and split them out, and each column is information about that particular candidate. Okay, so don't do something like this. I'll just show you a wrong example. Yeah, for example, we have the mayor, right? We have mayor and the position for mayor, and we have 5 candidates, right? Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candidates. Okay, so don't do something like this. Okay, so mayor, candidate 1, and candidate 2, and then candidate 3, 4, 5, 6. You get it, right? 4, 5, 6. Okay. Don't do this, because in this case, you are having multiple candidates in the same row, right? All right. Okay, on the same row, multiple candidates. This will not work when we want to do pivot table. Okay, so don't do this. Keep each row for one candidate only. Okay, then after that, the next step is that select all the data. So there are different ways of doing that. One is to select using mouse. Okay, you have to scroll until the bottom, the last line. Or you can do Control A, or Command A if you are on a MacBook. If you are on Windows, it's Control A. Okay, do this in your own file, the copy that you have made. Okay, and click Insert and click Pivot Table. Okay, select the data, click Pivot Table, Insert Pivot Table, click Create. Don't change any of the options here, just follow the default. Click Create, and you will get a new tab called Pivot Table 1. You should get 1, okay? Because that's your first pivot table. For me, this is my third pivot table. I have deleted the first 2. So I got Pivot Table 3. You should have Pivot Table 1, okay? And this is where we are able to summarize our data, okay? So how do we do that? You see that there's a rows here, which means what do we want to put under rows? There are columns. What do you want to put columns? And in the middle here is values, right? What do you want to put in values? How do you put them as row, columns, values? You use the panel here. The suggestions here, don't look at the suggestions. We'll pick it manually, okay? Under rows, columns, values, filters, if you click Add, it will give you a rows of options. These are the names of the columns here. Remember, first column is num, second column is name to appear, sex, name, political party, position. Okay. One thing that I forgot to tell you is that always keep your header, this is called a header, right? Or a title, right? On first row. You cannot do like 2 rows of title, okay? Say mayor, and then who are the numbers. Don't do 2 rows. This will not work, okay? Because by default, spreadsheets always treat the first row as the header and the second row as your data, okay? So don't do that. Okay. So keep your header in just 1 row, the first row. All right? So here, if you want to add something to rows or add something to columns, right? These are the columns that you want to put in, like which column, okay? Is it the name? Is it sex? Is it name? Is it political party? Is it position? All right. So here, if you want to know the gender composition of the candidates, right? Under rows, you try to put sex. And now you'll see that, so because under sex here, there are only 2 options, right? Male or female. So this male and female would appear as rows, female and male. Okay, so now I want to know among all the candidates, how many of them are female, how many of them are male. This is where you should put under values. Remember, this space is value, columns is here, okay? Rows, columns, and values, right? So under values, we are going to click Add the same thing, okay, sex, because we want to know the number of gender. After you add it, you'll see that now you know that there are 124 candidates in total. 99 of them are male, 25 of them are female. Okay, as simple as that. You don't have to come here. Usually what we do is that we are going to do a filter, right? Filter for just male, female, and we count how many female. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 99. Until what's the number again? Until 25, right? This is how we usually do, right? No, with pivot table, you don't have to do the filter. You just have to do it here. Okay. So if you want to see the number as percentage, okay, not as the absolute number, you want to look at percentage. You just have to go to under values. Remember, under values, the sex here. Here, there's a show as default, right? You just have to change this to percentage of column or percentage of row. But there's percentage of row, which means that it looks at this column. Percentage of column. It looks at this column and calculate the percentage. Okay. So in this case, we should look at percentage column. And now you see that 20% of the candidates are female, almost 80% are male. Okay, if you use the percentage of role, it will give you 100%, 100%, because it is looking at role and role. Okay, this row has only one number, so it is 100%, right? So the right way is to do percentage of column. One important thing, folks, is that no matter what you put in here, no matter how you change this pivot table, it doesn't change your data here. Okay, so don't worry, go crazy with the pivot table, put in everything, play with it, experiment with it, right? It will not break your data here. Okay, your data remain this, right? This is just rearranging your data and summarizing your data so that you can have quick analysis of your data. All right, I will just show you another step. Okay, we have put in rows, we have put in values, right? We can also put in columns. Okay, I want to know the male and female composition, not just total, but I want to know the composition for each position, right? I want to look at position. So under columns, I can put position. And now you see that I'm able to look at, right? In the position of mayor, 33% are female, 66% are male. Which position has the highest composition of female candidates? I think it's mayor, 33%. The lowest, I think, is the councillor for the 6th district, only about 7%. If I don't want to look at the percentage, I want to look at the numbers. Remember, change percent of column to default. And now I'm looking at the numbers. Okay, you can also switch between columns and rows. If this is too hard to read, because you always need to click to see which 4th district, 2nd district, right? You can always switch columns with rows. So let us start again. I can remove everything. Okay, now we start from the very beginning. Under rows, we can put the position. Now we have the different positions, right? Under columns here, we can now put the gender or sex, right? What about values? Should we put sex or should we put position? The answer is either one works. You will get the same number, don't worry, okay? Either sex or position works, right? Just don't put other columns, right? Because if your columns are sex, your rows are position, then you should pick either one of them, okay? So in this case, I'll just put sex, and then I'll get female, male for each position. Okay. Again, if I want to look at the percentage, I will just, under values, I'll just change default to percentage of, this should be percentage of role. Okay. Because we are looking at each role for the calculation. Okay. If we add up both, should be 100%. If we add up both, should be 100%, right? But if we use column of percent of column, which means that we are looking at each column. Okay, so it depends on what kind of analysis you want. If we go to a default, then this is the default, the absolute numbers. Okay, so besides from gender composition, we can also look at, for example, I want to look at which position have the highest number of political parties contesting. So I can do political parties as rows, right? Different parties. And columns, I'll put position, okay? And values, I'm going to put position. Now you see that, okay? For each position, which parties are contesting, okay? So you'll be able to see that some party, they only contest one position, you see? This party, Federalismo, sorry, I don't think I can pronounce it. They are only contesting in the councillor of the 5th district here. Okay, The party that contested the highest number of position is this party, right? It has 38 candidates for different positions. All right, I'll just leave our remaining 2 minutes for you to play with pivot table. This is the only thing that I want to show you. For the other basic things like, how do you sort the data? How do you do filter, right? All these things, I don't think I need to show you, right? You just go and Google. There are a lot of tutorials about how to use spreadsheets, right? You don't have to come to this workshop just to learn all the basic things. But I want to show you how to use pivot table, because I find pivot table is something that not many people know, but something that is extremely efficient when it comes to data analysis, right? But you have to make sure that you get your data right in the right format, and it's clean before you can do this. Okay, so you might want to ask me okay, after I got this number, I want to make into a chart, or I want to export it, I want to print a table. How do I do? Simple, folks. You just have to copy the data that you want. Okay, copy, Control C, and then move to a new sheet. That's it. So if you want to sort the data, for example, I want to sort the data of 5th district. I can select all the data, go to data, sort range, advanced, 5th district, equal to lowest. Now I'm sorting it according to the 5th district, from the highest to the lowest. All right, so once you know your data, once you found the data that you want, you just have to copy them and paste it in the new sheets. Then from here, you might be able to export it to make a chart or something like that. Okay. You have about 15 minutes to play with it before we continue with our second session. Keep this spreadsheets, folks, because we are going to use our data here under data for charts to make some charts later. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. You have any questions, you can ask me again in the following session, right? So I'll see you in 15 minutes.